بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله يا رب العالمين، نحمده ونشكره على هدايته، ونصلي ونسلم على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه المنتجبين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Sisters and brothers, our dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another program for the Ramadan 2023 period. I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts your supplication, du'as, fasting, prayers, and inshallah during this, whatever is left of this month, we would utilize it most effectively to get closer to Allah as we approach Layal al-Qadr. قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم الحسن والحسين إمامان إن قاما وإن قعدوا. Hassan and Hussein, his two grandsons, are imams and leaders whether they rise or they don't. Today being the 15th of Ramadan, the anniversary of the birth of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salatu wassalam, I thought it would be useful to focus, however briefly, on the life of our second Imam and the fourth of the Ma'sumin, Ahl al-Kisab. Imam Hassan is the eldest grandson of the Holy Prophet from the only surviving child of the Holy Prophet, which is Fatima al-Zahra, and Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wa salamu alayhi. According to traditions, he was born on the 3rd of Hijrah, 15th of Ramadan, 3rd of Hijrah. He was brought up by his grandfather, the Holy Prophet, and within the household of the Holy Prophet. For his grandfather took the responsibility of his upkeep and upbringing for the first 7 years of his life until the departure of the Holy Prophet. From the ahadith that we have so far, during this period, the Holy Prophet did not conceal his love for his grandsons. He would carry them on his shoulders and seating them on his laps and allowing them to ride on his back whenever he went to sujood and prostration, and even would prolong the sujood until they come down. So there are widely reported ahadith from the Holy Prophet about Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. For example, Al-Hassan wal-Hussein Sayyiday Shabab Ahl al-Jannah. Hassan and Hussein are the lords, his grandsons are the lords of the youth of paradise. The hadith that I read at the beginning, Al-Hassan wal-Hussein Imaman Qama am Qad aw Qada, is part of this collection of ahadith that have been left from the Holy Prophet regarding the imama of Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein. It's not somehow conditional to their prevailing political uprising, whether they rise or they don't. Imama is something that has been granted to them and it doesn't depend on what they do with regard to the political issues. Unfortunately, when we have either martyrdom of any imam or the birth of any imam, most of the discussion about the imam centers on what I call biographical or historical narratives of the usual birth, a few anecdotes about the life of the imam, possibly one or two hadith about the imam, and when it comes to Imam Hassan, salawatullah wasalam alayhi, the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, salawatullah wasalam alayhi, and then his taking responsibility of the imamah for a short period of time, the abdication, and going back to Medina, and ultimately the martyrdom. The stories that we have in most conversation about the life of Imam Hassan centers around these issues. But to have more in-depth understanding of the lives of Imam, it is in general to think about the life of Imam in general and Imam Hassan in particular. We really need to address few issues. Number one, with the departure of the Holy Prophet, the life of Ahlul Bayt, and we see this from the weeping of Imam Fatima al-Zahra salamallahu alayha and others, the life of Ahlul Bayt transitioned into a different phase. That respect that was given to them and love and affection that the Holy Prophet showered them were no longer there. For Imam Hassan in particular, certainly this violent transition of what happened after was disturbing and had a number of consequences. But for him as a child, which is about 7 years old, to witness the death of the Holy Prophet, martyrdom of Fatima al-Zahra, particularly painful was the fact how the Ummah, the Muslim community of the early age, treated Fatima al-Zahra and dealt with her during that period. Marginalization of his father, that the person that used to be the center of the life of the Muslim community. The Holy Prophet trusted and worked with him, and in a number of ahadith that says if it wasn't for Sayf Ali, which was the sword of Ali, and the wealth of Khadija, Islam would not have survived. So for somebody to have such a pivotal position within Islam suddenly being marginalized completely was extremely painful for Imam Hassan. Most of his childhood, if we look at the child of Imam Hassan, most of his childhood was spent after the departure of the Holy Prophet, which he was 7 years old, within the life of Abu Bakr, the 2 years of Abu Bakr Khilafah, and around 10 years of Umar's Khilafah. So if we say 12 years, Umar and Abu Bakr both together, and Imam Hassan was 7 years. So by the time Umar was assassinated, then he was close to 90. The early teenage period was spent during this, the life or the time of Khilafah of Abu Bakr and Umar. One of the problems that we have when it comes to analysis and discussion of the life of Ahlul Bayt, particularly Imam Hassan, that we don't have many ahadith that covers this early period and gives us a clear picture of how this transition and from one phase to another took place, and how Imam Hassan reacted to the turn of events. Beyond some anecdotal stories, for example, one of them is that Imam Hassan walks into Masjid al-Nabi. By then he is around 9 or 10 years old, and sees Umar on the pulpit or member of the Holy Prophet, and tells him to come down. This is a member or the pulpit of my grandfather, go and find your own. But we can say for sure, irrespective of the fact that we really don't have much to create a clear image about the early life of Imam Hassan, but we can say for sure that he was active in social fabric of the society at that time. He certainly participated, according to a number of historical documents, participated in a number of battles. One of the major events that he faced during his early life particularly during the time where Uthman was the power, was the uprising against Uthman by the Muslim community, in which they were hoping to try to force him to let go of his tyranny and incompetence and nepotism, and the unrest finally led to the death of Uthman and what is called by historians to be the first civil war. During this period of upheaval, particularly when Uthman's house was besieged and barricaded, no interaction was allowed by the revolutionaries to take place between Uthman or inside of the house and outside of the house. Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah alayhi ordered Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein to take food, sustenance for Uthman, and to start discussing the situation with Uthman. Hopefully, and even he himself would go to Uthman's house and discuss the severity of the situations, so that in the hope that Uthman might realize how severe was the case, and hopefully the situation would change and Uthman would concede to the just demand of the revolutionaries. But unfortunately, Uthman refused to change, and ultimately this refusal led to attack on his house and Uthman being killed. The next major event in Imam Hassan's life was naturally as a consequence of Uthman's death, and the congregation coming and to the Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wasalam alayhi and asking him to take the lead. By then they had had enough of the Abu Bakr, Umar, and ultimately Uthman's leadership. And I will soon discuss something which the early Muslims really did not see it coming, but Amir al-Mu'mineen and Fatima al-Zahra did see the consequence of ultimately corrupt leadership, what is going to happen to society. So people come to him or came to him and asked for bay'ah so that he becomes their new leader. And immediately the old clan mindset stood up against his leadership by orchestrating 3 wars, one after the other, which was first of all under the leadership of Aisha. Started Jamal, at least 40 to 45,000 people were killed. Sometimes I wonder on the day of judgment how Aisha is going to respond to such a question, that your Imam, and even according to the Sunni scholars, your Imam, the one that people swore allegiance and bay'ah, was Ali ibn Abi Talib. So on what basis you rose, and particularly the bloodshed that took place, despite the fact that we have a number of ahadith from the Holy Prophet warning Aisha to be mindful of the day where her leadership, or at least the battle organized by her and supported by her, is going to lead to huge amount of bloodshed of the innocent Muslims in the middle. The next war was Siffin, orchestrated by Muawiyah. Well, Muawiyah's case is well known as corrupt as anything. I don't believe that there will be a chance of him answering any question. And the third is Khawarij. These are the renegade group, simple-minded, no depth in understanding religion, rose against the Holy Imam, and ultimately led to the Battle of Nahrawan, with a huge number of them being killed, and a few people that remained spread around. And one of those people was the one who became the assassin, the one that killed Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wasalam alayhi. After the martyrdom of Amir al-Mu'mineen, for 6 months, Imam Hassan tried to hold on, because people swore allegiance to him, hold on to Imam and Khilafah, and ultimately saw that there was no chance whatsoever, and he had to abdicate and go to Medina, start his imamah and the spiritual guidance that the society needed. This is just a brief outline of what Imam Hassan suffered during this period. There is another point that we really need to discuss and outline, which is much more critical. The Holy Prophet ﷺ departed this world and left an ummah, which is a group of people that followed his guidance and his faith, the faithful. The social institution, what we call al-mujtama' al-Islami, and that rested its function on, at least to a degree, on the work of Islam and the guidance of the Holy Prophet, and particularly a political institution under his own auspices. He was the leader of the society, and he hoped that pure leadership would continue after him by the incident of Ghadir, and by commanding people to follow Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah salamu alayhi after him. And so he departed with all of these three at least intact. Immediately after his departure, Saqifa sabotaged, at least nothing else, the issue of leadership, where the leadership was removed from the most deserving, the right leader. And naturally, for people such as Fatima az-Zahra salamun alayha and Amir al-Mu'mineen, they could see how corrupt leadership and the sabotaging of that plan that the Holy Prophet had for the society ultimately is going to have consequences, not in the short term, but at least in the medium to long term. As we saw what happened to Umar, and what happened to Uthman, these two, particularly the civil war, and even one could say immediately after Abu Bakr coming to power, a number of tribes refusing to pay zakat and recognizing Abu Bakr to be a leader. This clearly indicated that now that trio of ummah, social structure and leadership that the Holy Prophet was hoping to work in synergy and together is beginning to fall apart. The cracks are appearing, and only it's a matter of time where this is going to lead to complete fracture and disunity within the society. If you listen to Fatima az-Zahra salamun alayha in Khutbat al-Fadakiyya in Masjid al-Nabi, she points to this, reminds the early Muslims of the bleak future by marginalizing Ali and starting a program independent of what the Holy Prophet was envisaged. With the coming to power of Amir al-Mu'mineen and the short period of Imam Hassan, any attempt to bring back that leadership and bring back these trio to some kind of fusion that the Holy Prophet intended to have, unfortunately failed. And the political attempt became futile to directly go after the leadership and try to change it, because the political base wasn't there and people really did not have the political insight to understand what they have done to themselves. Imam Hussein salawatullah salam alayhi tried a different strategy. The leadership is strongly in power, and there is not enough power to dislodge this leadership. Imam Hussein's strategy was to see whether the ummah, one member of this trio, the ummah could be somehow emotionally, religiously motivated to rise against the political power, or at least to create enough political base that ultimately would be used to topple that political base. Again, after Karbala, it became clear that even that attempt is not going to work. So what remained for Ahlul Bayt is to keep the Ummah on what I call it a survival mode, and to educate them and enlighten them. Hopefully one day they will rise up and there is enough number for them to stand in support of Imam, whether it was during their own lifetime or after, where the Imam, the hidden Imam will come and they would rise to do that. After the abdication of Imam Hassan and the Sulh peace treaty with Muawiyah, Imam realized that at this stage there was nothing that could have been done could be done to motivate the society to stand up. When you get to the stage where your own family members stab you with a dagger and they accept money from Muawiyah and everything else and desert you, it clearly indicated the moral corruption and the love of material that existed in society. So he went back to Medina and began his more or less the spiritual responsibility. So any attempt politically and militarily to change the structure failed. Now moves towards much more a spiritual strategy to educate the society. And the way he did it was during the 10 years period that he was in Medina between the 40th after Hijrah and 50th after Hijrah, where he was martyred. He encouraged ethical and moral lifestyle. We see that by being an exemplary example himself, and a hadith from him regarding this moral lifestyle. Seeking knowledge, encouraging people to seek knowledge because the society was ignorant. Standing up to justice, for justice, and standing up for those that their rights have been taken away, the vulnerable and the marginalized. Understanding and comprehending the Quran, and he began teaching it and commentary of Quran for those who would come and listen. On a personal level, we have a number of ahadith from Imam Hassan salawatullah wasalam alayhi, underscoring patience, tolerance, forgiveness, charity and generosity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Support and assistance to the poor and the needy, widows and orphans. This has become not only the character of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wasalam alayhi. Imam Hassan did it during his life, where he would late at night fill up bags and go to the far away from the city, call it the city slum, where the poor, the needy and the orphans used to live, and incognito would provide them with food and sustenance without them even recognizing it. Imam Hussein did it during his life, and Imam Zain al-Abidin, Imam Sajjad did it. There is a hadith from Imam Muhammad al-Baqir that says, after the departure of Imam Zain al-Abidin, when I was trying to wash him just before burial, I realized there was a big lump of thick skin on his back that was due to carrying this huge weight during his life and sadaqat and so on, to go and give it to the poor and the needy. Taqwa and piety is those, again, critical personal characteristics that Imam Hassan salawatullah wasalam alayhi spent during the last 10 years. Family values and treating each other with respect within the institution of family. So if we are looking for legacies of Imam Hassan salawatullah wasalam alayhi, these legacies change as the phases, political phases, and the social phases change. At the beginning, immediately after the demise of Amir al-Mu'mineen salawatullah wasalam alayhi and the bay'ah that he received from people of Kufa, he thought that he might be able to go after Muawiyah as the source of pain and injustice for the Muslim community and unite them together. Unfortunately, Uthmani followers and Bani Umayyads, they had already established themselves strongly, and it was not possible, and the political base was not there. So the political guidelines were somehow put on the mantle, and the spiritual strategy was taken, and the values of Ahlul Bayt began to propagate. What we need to understand, that if we really learn from the past history and begin to understand that if we want to become the exemplary ummah, we have no other alternative. It's not going to happen without jihad and a struggle, both on personal level, which is a number of characteristics that we have. We shouldn't have. When we have to get rid of them. We need to be patient, tolerant, and forgiving, supporting the poor and the needy, and also considering taqwa and piety, and distancing ourselves from all the vices that we have, particularly during this month, the period of month of Ramadan, that we are guests before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done everything possible that we go back to Dua Abu Hamza Thumali, when at the beginning Imam Sajjad says, "Oh Lord, don't bring me or remind me to come back to the right path through punishment, but the softer approach is the opportunity that the month of Ramadan has created." May Allah bless you all, and thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you inshallah in the next session. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.